Welcome to the Bible Momming Podcast, where we are parenting by the book. I'm your host, Paula Whidden. This podcast is for women who struggle with regular mom stuff, but also long to have their kids grow closer to Christ. It's a lifetime journey, and we're in it together. As a real mom, you just never know where I'll be podcasting from, but I'll always be available for you. Now let's get started. Hey, this is Paula Whidden. I'm the host and founder of the Bible Momming Podcast, and I'm excited to talk with you today. If you want to receive this podcast regularly, please remember to click subscribe so that you can get it whenever you want to. Also, if you have any questions or ideas, I would love to hear from you. You can email me at paula@biblemomming.com. That's Paula at BIBLEMOMMING.com. Now, today's topic is conservative clothing, what it is, and why do we care? Now, as a youth pastor, I often had to deal with this issue of clothing, especially when it came to going to camp. I was pastoring some of the camps when they had not yet developed their modesty guidelines that they now have today. I remember being asked by other youth pastors, they were all, of course, guys, to speak with the girls from my group about wearing maybe a t-shirt at the swimming pool or changing their clothes because too many guys were distracted by them. And here I was, a young single woman, and I fumbled on this topic seriously. I tried to address the girls of my group, and the whole time I felt horrible because the guys were looking at the girls whether they wore revealing clothes or not. These girls were very good-looking girls. And now I'm a mom of two very good-looking girls. And we've struggled through this topic for years. Even as I was putting together this podcast, I was asking them what they thought on the topic of modesty and conservative clothing. I remember years ago, I was watching, what is it called? I think it was called 19 Kids and Counting, and the Duggar family. And I remember being stunned at their approach to modesty. It was much, much more than I was used to. The girls were covered from neck to below their knees. They wore long skirts, including skirts as a part of their swimming attire. I'd never seen anything like it before. And over time, we learned that there was some problems as far as activity in that family. And whether or not they dressed that modestly didn't seem to matter. I grew up in California and Arizona, so swimming, for swimming's sake, was part of my life. And all I could think about was when I saw those swimming clothes that they had, I would probably drown in something like that because I really would want to swim. I've always considered myself a modest person, but comparatively speaking, there's a huge divide between what they were doing and what I think of. Now, with spring coming, we'll all be hunting for the warm weather clothes for our kiddos, and I just wanted to have a chat with you guys about conservative and modest clothing and what it is. Why do we wear it, or do we wear it? Culture in the United States has definitely changed over the years, and because the Bible is international, I'm thinking it isn't strictly connected to one culture of one country. When I was a teenager, I went on a mission trip to Mexico, and we were told a dress code for that event, and it was basically that we needed to have our clothes not distract from the purpose of our mission, which was to build the second story on a church building. So we were told not to wear shorts at all and no tank tops. Now, this was a work trip, so other types of clothing weren't really even on the table at that time, based on what was being offered in our stores. Now, years later, I went on a trip to Uganda, and there was again a dress code. It included for women wearing knee-length or longer dresses or skirts, nothing revealing, no plunging necklines, at least short sleeves. And again, the main point of this dress code was that our dress wouldn't distract from the mission. This time we were going with a mission organization that ministers to the community, and we were going to help out the school and serve in the community as well. Now, this dress code stuff is all over the place, and because I was thinking about it, I started looking up dress codes, and I found one of the dress codes for a local public high school nearby me. Here's what they say on their dress code. They said clothing should not appear gang-related. Okay, I get that. That has to do with fights and things like that, right? Then they also said clothing should be properly sized. Pants must be able to stay up without the use of a belt or suspenders. Pants may have a relaxed fit, but not be baggy or be hemmed up. and must be hemmed. In other words, no cutoffs. Then they also said clothing shall be worn in a manner appropriate for school. Sagging of clothes is prohibited. Tops of pants must be worn at the waist. Clothing should cover underwear. Bottoms of pants may not touch the ground. Shorts must be hemmed. Clothes shall not be immodest. Crop tops, shorts, low-cut blouses, tube tops, muscle shirts, and backless tops are not appropriate at school. Tops and pants should not expose the navel or midriff. All right, so that's what they had. You know, I'll confess, as a part of the community that drives past that school regularly, I do have some serious doubts that these rules are actually enforced. But I'm still interested that this public school found these things important for helping kids focus on their education. I would probably also be curious how well, as times change, are they going to have to include the holes that are in various types of clothing nowadays and where those can or cannot be. I've come to calling it homeless chic, as I've been talking to my kids about, holes in just about everywhere. Now, on the topic of modest or conservative clothing, what I've noticed is, even though this school listing did include things that were for guys, most of us tend to focus on girls. And I recently asked a question on Facebook. Here's what I asked. And I was very, very broad in the way I said it. I did not say boys or girls. I asked, when it comes to modest or conservative clothing, what comes to your mind? There were approximately 80 women at various places on Facebook that responded to this question for me. And 98% of these women focused on female clothing. That was interesting. I didn't expect that. I thought that I'd see more about guys as well, but really, it was the women talking about girls. Now, this could be frustrating to us as women, to have that kind of focus put on ourselves or our girls. But what I'm noticing is everyone, including us, recognizes the need. So what does the Bible say on this topic? I was hunting through the scriptures, and here are some of the ones I came across. It said in 1 Timothy 2:9, it says, "And I want women to be modest in their appearance." This is the Apostle Paul talking. And he's talking to a church that he founded and somebody else is at. He says, "I want women to be modest in their appearance. They should wear decent and appropriate clothing and not draw attention to themselves by the way they fix their hair or by wearing gold or pearls or expensive clothes. For women who claim to be devoted to God should make themselves attractive by the good things they do." Now, in all fairness, modesty at that time was very different from modesty at this time. And I suspect were the Apostle Paul to see me sitting here in my home office in my t-shirt and jeans, he would probably have thought I was immodest. Jeans would have been stunning. I mean, they just, sewing-wise, were not doing that at that time. 1 Peter 3:4 says, "You should clothe yourselves instead with the beauty that comes from within, the unfading beauty of a gentle and quiet spirit, which is so precious to God." So the focus in this one is not about the clothing itself so much as the attitude of the person who's wearing the clothing. In Proverbs 31, verses 25 and verse 30, it talks a little bit about this also. It says, this is a description of the ultimate woman by King Lemuel's mom. It says, she's clothed with strength and dignity, and she laughs without fear of the future. And then it also says, charm is deceptive and beauty does not last, but a woman who fears the Lord will be greatly praised. So when people are talking about conservative clothing being biblical, there's not much in the way of details here to give us guidance. I mean, let's be honest. And the guidance wasn't necessarily fitting in our culture at that time anyway, because of the fact that, they wore long, drapey clothes. They covered their heads. The difference was more like, did she have pearls? Was it expensive? Was she wearing gold? It's just a very different take on clothing. So what's our mission when it comes to clothes? Women who claim to be devoted to God should make themselves attractive by the good things they do. Okay, so that does not mean you can't take care of what you've been given. And it doesn't mean that men won't look at you even if you are being modest. The reality is that men will look. I learned this in a very unusual way as a youth pastor. There were several teenage boys who were part of our youth group. I used to drive the church van and take the group to events or camps or even home. And the acoustics of the van enabled me to hear almost every conversation all at once. Now, I was in the driver's seat, but I heard them. And I'll never forget one winter driving kids, some of the boys in the back noticed a woman who wasn't dressed provocatively, but she also didn't have much, how shall we put it, coverage with her bra area. They made comments about what they noticed, and they had no idea that I heard it all. Ladies, I'm telling you, they are looking. You'd be surprised at how much they're looking. Now, getting back to my question on Facebook. These moms, again, predominantly addressed modesty in women's clothing. A little over half of them were very specific. They referred to what they referred to as modesty was coverage of what they called the 3 Bs, the breast, the belly, and the buttocks. And that was not necessarily the terminology they all used. Several had a struggle between what was modest for a woman versus modest for a girl, and I definitely struggled with that with my girls. I just figured that if I started them wearing bikinis when they're little, they're going to become comfortable with it when they're older, but they won't know, understand, or want to understand what boys are looking at. So I decided to deal with their comfort level. And I just didn't dress them in bikinis and things like that when they were babies, not because they were being sexy, but because I was thinking ahead to how they would what their attitude would be when they were older. As teens, I've made my girls aware so that they can make wise choices with their own bodies, not ignorant ones. And they swim extensively, and honestly, a bikini couldn't keep up with all they do in the water. Now, without revelations happening, if you know what I mean. Now, one mom made this comment that I thought was really helpful. Here's what she said. She said, I believe modesty is a posture of the heart. If you're willing to set aside your own desires for the sake of others, then that's a good place to be. And that was a very, very genuine statement there. Specific statements some women can have. One woman mentioned no necklines plunging lower than 3 fingers below the collarbone. That was rather precise, in my opinion. Another mom mentioned shorts no shorter than a 4-inch inseam. I'm not sure which body types they mean as they mention these things, but I'm sure these locations would be different on a curvy short girl versus a thin tall girl. Now, there was mention of a need for modesty on the part of boys, too. One mom said this. She said, for starters, I don't think they should show their underwear. And I don't think it's appropriate for young teenage boys to walk around with no shirt in front of young girls. I've seen boys walk around in boxers like they're shorts, and in my opinion, for teenagers, I don't think it's appropriate. Now, I will always remember being at a park when my kids were younger, and all the moms were talking as we watched our munchkins, while some teenagers were skateboarding nearby, and they had droopy drawers. Matter of fact, there was a song that somebody came up with that was really goofy about that sort of thing. He called it Pants on the Ground, looking like a fool with your pants on the ground. That was a song that was out there with, I don't remember what show somebody came up with it. It was one of those auditioners that didn't exactly succeed, but the song stuck in my head. Well, we all commented, all the moms were commenting about these guys, and then one of us decided to talk with them. After she spoke with these guys, they got together in a little huddle. They went to the bathroom, and then they came back, and all their pants were up. So, of course, all of us were like, what did you say to them? She told us that she had said, hey, dude, I know you're trying to look cute for the girls, but they aren't the only ones looking. That made me laugh so hard. But at the same time, there is a reality there. One mom shared her guidance for her sons. She said, you are responsible for even your own thoughts and actions. You are to treat women/girls with respect, even if they show cleavage, back crack, cheeks, or camel toe. That was a new one. I'll tell you about that in a bit later. Modesty is important. That's for boys. That's what she said. And as I asked this short question, one woman said she hadn't even thought about it before. And maybe that's the whole point. We want to live our lives as we see fit, but if we all did that, we'd pretty much be animals. I mean, People who just live with every comfort they want aren't exactly courteous people. So when it comes to clothing, what can we do to please God? Our attitudes are what matter. Are we loving God and all that He says with our whole heart, mind, and strength? If we are, then we want to please Him in how we dress. And that means not letting ourselves become an idol for somebody else, not showing off our parts, but showing off our personhood. Should not be found in our flesh, but in our unfading beauty that overflows from what's inside us. In the meantime, maybe you could have this conversation with your kids, be them boy or girl. You could ask them, hey, what do you think about modesty or conservative clothing? And what comes to mind? And get them thinking about, why does it matter? Because, you see, clearly everybody, male and female, are looking. What do you want them to look at? Now, the camel toe thing, oh my goodness. That was a description of what happens in the front zone of a girl when she's wearing tight leggings. Yeah, definitely something to watch out for, ladies. Now, if you want to listen to this podcast more, click the plus or check mark to subscribe and scroll down to the bottom. Give it a rating or review. I love to hear from you, and I read every one. I've enjoyed this time we have together. I know you have plenty of things to do and many options, so thank you for listening. Remember, love is patient, love is kind, and that is never more real than in our families. God bless you and have a great week.